Good morning and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Victoria Lawson and I'm excited to be here with Nathan. Good morning, Nathan.
Hello. Yes, Victoria. Hello. Sorry. Let me just turn my camera on. Just wait a second. There we go. Can everyone see me?
Nathan, have you been kidnapped?
Well, I had a call from Papa Elf a week ago. Apparently, Santa's needing some procurement people to help him with the preparations for Christmas. So I'm afraid I've been drafted into Santa's workshop. So we'll probably have to keep this quick because he's got quite a lot to get through, I'm afraid, and I'm here to help him. So yes, if that's okay, we'll crack on.
Brilliant. Okay, I did stop sharing the screen there just so we could see the full background in you as an elf, Nathan.
Thank you.
I'm actually speechless. I wasn't expecting Nathan to be an elf today. There we go.
It's pretty cold up here, Victoria, but we're working hard. We're working hard.
Excellent. I will reshare my screen. There you go. Well, Nathan, together we're going to guide everybody through today's webinar, hopefully, which is on creating effective procurement plans under the new regulations. And as you can see, we do have an engaging agenda lined up for you, and I think it has just got more engaging. So we are hopefully going to be covering understanding the importance of a procurement plan under the new regulations, learning steps to create a comprehensive procurement plan, and review an example of a forward procurement plan, and also ensure how the plans are aligned with all the regulatory requirements, and gain some best practices for documenting your procurement process. So we do encourage you to interact with us throughout this session. So please do feel free to use the chat to ask any questions or share your thoughts. We also have several polls during the webinar to gather your input and make the session as interactive as possible. So let's dive in and start with why having a procurement plan is crucial under the new regulations. Nathan.
Yes, absolutely. It is more essential than ever under the new Procurement Act 2023. So those of you who have been on a few of our other webinars recently will have heard a bit more about the Procurement Act. So the Procurement Act 23 introduces robust guidelines for public procurement, emphasising transparency, fairness, accountability. So schools and trusts have to now demonstrate compliance at every stage of the procurement process. So a procurement plan provides that structured roadmap. So it helps to plan ahead, which is going to be ever more important. Ensuring activities from initial market engagement to contract award align with the legal standards and can be readily audited, and that's a really important point, that it's going to be obviously needs to be transparent. So part of that is driving strategic procurement goals. So with financial constraints intensifying, and we all know about that, reactive procurement is going to be even more difficult, and you put yourself at risk of obviously increased costs and reduced efficiency by not planning ahead. So the Act does highlight the importance of more of a strategic approach. So it moves the dial from reactive and ad hoc procurement through to strategic procurement. So a robust procurement plan will help you and schools align with procurement decisions with broader objectives, such as things like enhancing student outcomes through targeted resource investments, supporting sustainability goals, such as reducing emissions, and strengthening local communities by engaging with small and local suppliers. And part of the Act is around how to have regard to the greater public good through procurement. Streamlining processes for efficiency. Well, increased efficiency is going to be critical. It's a critical component of the new regulation. So a detailed procurement plan will enable you to outline those key milestones and assign clear roles to staff for each procurement, establish well-defined evaluation criteria for supplier selection and award up front, and hopefully avoid delays by ensuring every step is time bound and coordinated. And as I always say, time is the best friend of procurement, giving yourself plenty of time to understand. Embedding social value and sustainability. So whilst we're still waiting on something called the National Procurement Policy Statement, which will further give details around how procurements are to achieve social value, the Procurement Act does prioritise the greater good of public spending, and it will require organisations to demonstrate benefits to the community, the environment, that sort of thing. So again, having a procurement plan helps you to plan that up front as well, to identify which procurements could be the most useful for those sort of outcomes. Obviously, transparency and having audit-ready documentation will ensure that you're on top of things. So the Act's focus on transparency will demand that schools document procurement processes meticulously, and having a procurement plan will serve as that central repository for decision-making records, supplier assessments, contract award justifications, etc. So that all facilitates a smoother audit process and reassures stakeholders, governors, and regulators indeed about accountability. And lastly, Victoria, it's about reducing risk and enhancing compliance. So obviously, non-compliance risks under the Act could include financial penalties and reputational damage. So having a procurement plan proactively addresses those risks by identifying those potential pitfalls early, such as things like ambiguous specifications, or ensuring conflicts of interest checks are done early on, and establishing clear oversight to manage the processes at each stage. So, I mean, the Procurement Act really is a shift change from reactive and ad hoc procurement to something that's more planned and more controlled. And I would encourage all schools to think about a procurement plan accordingly.
Yeah, so I would always think of a procurement plan as your trusty GPS for navigating the complex world of purchasing. And I do hope Nathan's GPS is working and he's able to return back shortly.
Me too, because it is rather cold up here. Yes.
And without it, you might end up lost, but in paperwork and compliance issues. But with a strategic and efficient plan, you'll stay on the right path, avoid costly detours, and reach your destination smoothly and efficiently. Plus, it does ensure you're considering social value and sustainability, while also being prepared for audits and managing that risk. So it'll keep you all on the same page, so you can focus on what really matters, getting the best value for your organisation. So Nathan, how can schools and trusts create a comprehensive procurement plan?
Yeah, that's great. So in a couple of slides, I actually give an example of a very basic, straightforward plan. It's not rocket science particularly, but here's a few top tips, I guess. So obviously, you need to understand what your needs are going forward. That can be informed from contracts that are coming up for renewal that you know about next year, or things that are in your budgetary plan. You may have some capital investments, all sorts of things. So it's about defining those procurement needs. So start with that assessment, identify what goods, services, or works are required for the year ahead. At least a year. I would maybe even encourage looking at a forward plan that goes over a number of years, just because in some cases procurement lead times can be quite lengthy. So that does require engaging with and consulting with key stakeholders, such as other staff, teachers, governors, even parents in some cases, to understand needs and priorities. Even students, dare I say, which I know is sometimes undertaken with things like catering services, for example. Categorizing purchases, so categorizing them into things like catering, cleaning, IT, facilities management, and that will help to sort of better leverage suppliers and aggregate procurement, so we're not sort of missing out on things that we could sort of procure in an aggregated way. Aligning with school objectives, so ensuring the procurement plan supports your schools and your MAT's broader objectives. So how does procurement aim to help improve educational outcomes? How does it improve your sustainability targets? And that's where we can look at things like social value, for example, and giving opportunities to local businesses, promoting apprenticeships, all sorts of things. Obviously, we need to understand anticipated spend and budget. That will help understand what process you have to follow under the Procurement Act, and obviously that should be done on a total duration of the contract spend. So what is that potential spend over a number of years? In considering things like inflation, and within the Procurement Act now, that ought to also include things like VAT. Defining your procurement timelines. Well, as I mentioned before, time is the greatest friend and can be the enemy of procurement. So, what are those key milestones? When do tenders need to be issued? Always work back from the contract award stage. So when you need that contract to commence and be awarded, work backwards from that. So some of these procurements can take 6 months, 9 months. I'm sure we've all been involved in some of those. So it's always good to work backwards. So if your contract needs to start in September for the new school year, you probably need to start thinking about procurement in April. It is that sort of duration of time, and that's to allow sufficient time to understand your specification, to consider all these things, to undertake sufficient time for competitive bidding, evaluations, and unforeseen delays. There are routes to market. So we talk about frameworks and dynamic purchasing systems, or DPS, that can offer a reduction in that time by offering pre-vetted suppliers, predefined contracts, compliance guarantees. So again, in your plan, you can highlight this could be a framework or a DPS or whatever. Continue to monitor and evaluate the plan. It's not just a one-off process. It needs to be regularly reviewed. I would advise that it's at least monthly reviewed, and colleagues are aware, or certainly senior colleagues are aware of what's on the plan, what needs to happen and when, because obviously procurement can take time and it can take resource and cost as well. Okay, Victoria? So we mentioned about using frameworks and DPS. Obviously, we have, as education buying, quite a number of frameworks and DPSs that you can access. So within your procurement plan, you might want to identify, say, if you have a cleaning contract you need to procure next year, one of the options for you is to access our existing cleaning DPS. So you can see the number of different categories. We've recently just launched a category for management information systems, financial management systems, and budgeting. So that went live last month, and that'll be in place now for the next 4 years. And again, these all offer some time saving, guaranteed compliance in terms of they've already been procured to a degree. You run what's called a mini competition or a further competition. In some cases, with things like school supplies and printers and copiers, you can undertake a direct award based on pre-negotiated rates and terms. So we have lots and lots of MATs and schools that access these, and hopefully successfully so over the last few years. So yes. Anything else you want to say on those, Victoria?
Just to access those, you have to be registered with us. So we have just popped in the chat the link to that. You might get an error come up when you do register. Just at the moment, we're having some technical difficulties with the portal as we're currently giving it a facelift, which should hopefully be ready for January when you come back after the Christmas holiday.
Sure, we'll all be excited to see that, Victoria. We'll
yes.
be able to contain ourselves over Christmas.
So creating a comprehensive procurement plan for schools and trusts might sound like a daunting task, but it is all about understanding the need and aligning your efforts strategically. As Nathan's mentioned, start by setting clear timelines to keep everyone on track. Use those established frameworks and DPSs, which help streamline those processes, and don't forget to evaluate your options carefully. Then you'll make sure you've made the best choice. So with a well thought out plan, you'll be able to successfully navigate procurement with ease and confidence. So Nathan, what does a forward procurement plan actually look like?
So I've popped in a very basic example here. This is not rocket science, folks, and a good lot of procurement is just good admin. If it was rocket science, I wouldn't be doing it, would I? So this is an example of a basic forward procurement plan. So what you effectively want is some sort of spreadsheet or list. The challenge with this is getting the information, it's getting the data. Sometimes we do what's called a spend analysis before, which you look at all the spend with the suppliers and then categorize that, look at what suppliers are on contract, off contract, etc., and that can help inform this plan. But other ways are, again, surveying. I appreciate it's very difficult when you're a large MAT and procurement's quite disparate across the MAT, but other ways are surveying across your MAT to understand where the future procurements are. But very simply, you want to know what the procurement title is or the contract title, brief description, which schools, or is it all MAT? Is it the full MAT, or is it certain schools? What department does it apply to? Who is the lead person in the MAT responsible for that? It may be you, it may be someone else. What is the annual value? That's really important, and that's an estimated annual value, or you may know already if it's already in contract. What would be the proposed contract duration? And this is really important because that helps to work out what the whole life cost WLC value is. That is the figure by which we judge what procurement route and whether that is caught by the regulations or not. So as you can see there, I then put in, is that over the PCR public contract regulations threshold that would require an open advertised national process? So as you can see for the catering one, because it's over that value, that's a yes. But for something simple like grounds maintenance, where it's only for 2 schools and it's only 40,000 over the 2 years, then no, that would be under the threshold. So that then determines the procurement route. So you may think for catering, well, we'll use education buy-ins DPS, or we'll do a bespoke open tender, and therefore that's your procurement route. Or it could be something called a request for quotation. That very much depends on what's in your procurement policy. So at what value do you have to get quotes, etc. Importantly, when is the contract start date? And therefore, when is the procurement start date? So don't get confused by those. Contract start date, working backwards to procurement start date. So as you can see for catering, there's a good 5 months leeway there because of the complexities. There might be TUPE involved, etc. But for something like grounds maintenance, it's fairly straightforward, and therefore the procurement lead time, you can turn around a couple of quotes within, a couple of weeks, etc. So that is a very basic procurement plan, and obviously there's comments on there. But believe me, this will save a lot of headache going forward, because within this plan, you'll be able to then sort of go, well, okay, we need to commence this procurement now. I need to get in touch with this lead buyer, and we need to confirm that this is the anticipated value, etc., etc. So you may find that this forward procurement plan has 30, 40, 50 procurements on it by the time you've finished, but then at least you've got an idea as to what's coming up in the year and what's required, and crucially, who's going to do all that. Because I appreciate for many of you, procurement is just one part of your role. So this is useful to take to your senior stakeholders to say, look, we've got all this procurement to do, and by the way, 50% of that is over threshold and therefore requires quite a rigorous process. So that's just a very simple example forward procurement plan. Like I say, the difficulty is getting the data, getting the information, but once you've got it, it's in there, it's much easier to manage, and then it's over to obviously the actual procurement activity itself.
Yeah, and just to point out also that obviously that does have its contract start date, the procurement start date, and that is not the contract end date. That is when you need to start your procurement. We do have a dynamic contracts register on our portal, and that actually does have the review date as well, and it will send you an alert saying when you need to start working on this procurement, so then you've got plenty of time to be proactive and put in place the tender you need to do and get it comprehensively completed in time. So there has been a poll popped up there, so thank you very much for everybody who's engaged with that so far. So we were just wanting to know how you manage where you are with managing your current procurement planning. So there were some options there. So if you haven't cast your vote, please do so now, and because it is always interesting to see where everybody stands on these. So once we've got a sense of where everyone stands with their forward procurement planning, we're going to dive into our next question, which is how can procurement plans align with the new regulatory requirements?
Yeah, okay. Well, put simply, they do. So it enables you to firstly audit your current procurement plans. So, conducting a detailed review of your existing procurement plans helps to identify gaps that could lead to things like non-compliance, where the classic one is where you didn't know a contract was coming up for a renewal. The supplier notifies you with 2 weeks to go. You've got no option but to sort of extend that contract because you don't have the time to re-procure it properly. Well, that effectively, if it's over threshold, is what we call a direct award without competition. That is, unless you've got very good reason, that's actually illegal to do under the Procurement Act. So one of the things within the Act is it can't be due to failure to foresee that a contract was ending. It has to be a genuine emergency. So having a procurement plan helps you to sort of remain compliant with that, and obviously enables you to audit that. It helps you to focus on outcomes, on things like social value, because you can identify upfront, well in advance, this particular procurement would be a really good one for social value. So or things like sustainability or other outcomes like that, or even things like, we want to save money on this. We think we're paying too much, and therefore these procurements here we want to target for cost savings. Having time enables you to do that. Obviously, that all helps to improve transparency as well. Some organisations publish their forward procurement plans. That gives the market, if they're looking for it, chance to understand what you've got coming up for renewal, and therefore prepare for that. Again, one of the risks is if you post a tender opportunity cold to suppliers, they may have 5-10 other bids on the table at the same time. Yours might not be as an important or a priority, and therefore if it's not on the sales guy's sort of list, then you might not get as many bids, and that obviously is a risk to competition. But also, in terms of having a plan, it helps you to keep on top of when you need to publish key documents such as contract notices, award notices, tender documentation, and obviously maintains that robust records of decisions and communications. I mentioned it helps you to engage with suppliers early. So one of the opportunities by having a plan is you can identify any particular procurements you might want to do some pre-market engagement with. That is allowed under the regulations. There is a process to follow, and it's a little bit more stringent under the new Procurement Act, but at least you've got time then to understand. And pre-market engagement is a way of engaging with the market to help shape and get views on a particular procurement or a specification before you design and go out to tender. So it's good to get innovation and views. We're not always the best placed people to understand what we actually need and what's available on the market. So that having time to do that is really helpful, particularly for those big spend and complex high risk procurements. And obviously it ensures stakeholders are aware of the plan and helps you to sort of make sure staff are on side and are aware of what their obligations are, what procurements are coming up. You can plan things accordingly. So, if April, May, June is a nightmare time for you because it's so busy with exams and all sorts of things, then you can say, well, actually, we need to avoid calling on lots of staff at that point to get involved in a procurement because we know it's going to be busy. So again, it's not rocket science. It's about time, and a plan helps you to think. And this is why I always advocate, at least 1, if not 2 years worth of planning is very helpful for procurement. In some cases, I've been working 3 or 4 years ahead. You know, I know what contracts are coming up for renewal in 3, 4, or 5 years, and therefore it helps me to plan those accordingly. So I think, do we have a poll, Victoria? Another poll?
Yep, we certainly do. So we want to know how we can best support you in creating a compliant and strategic procurement plan for your school or trust. So, yep, vote now. Number A is yes, we're interested in education buy-ins procurement plan service. B, possibly, we'd like more information about the service. No, we are currently managing our procurement planning in-house. And D, it's not applicable to us at this time. So please do cast your vote and let us know how we can help you navigate the procurement landscape. And your feedback is invaluable to us.
Yeah, so just some best practices then for effective procurement documentation off the back of that. So establishing clear policies and procedures. One of the things that folks are tackling with at the minute is a need to review their procurement policy in light of the new Procurement Act. I would encourage you to sort of start looking at that, looking at what that means to be compliant with the new Procurement Act, but having a standardized procurement policy which outlines the steps and documentation required for each stage, including the tender and evaluation stages, etc., is really important. Developing templates and key documents will help that. We've showed obviously a very basic procurement plan, but having a contracts register as well, you know, having template documents that people can use is really important. One of the things we're keeping an eye on at the minute with the new Procurement Act is some template documents that have been developed and put out by Cabinet Office, and those will be hopefully made available. So some of those templates you won't need to invent from scratch, you know, things like tendering templates and assessment summaries. For those of you who know what that is, you know, there may be some templates coming out or have been put out soon. Having a centralized system, and this kind of goes back to your operating model for procurement, and particularly in the MAT sort of scenario where you may have lots of different people involved in procurement, but you know, is it controlled at the centre? Do you have a centralised repository for your forward procurement plan, your contract documents, your templates, your policy? How do people access those? And again, that just helps to ensure that people are using the right documents and the right sort of templates at the time. That helps to document decision making rationale. So one of the things with the new Procurement Act is the need to record reasons behind key procurement decisions, such as supplier selection, evaluation outcomes, and that helps with compliance and obviously feedback to bidders, which is something that will remain with the new Procurement Act. And in some cases, you might just need to bring in some expert support, whether that's on a one-off basis or ongoing basis. You know, I know a lot of MATs are now thinking about engaging with more of a full-time procurement professional, particularly the larger MATs. So not a bad thing, I say, as a procurement professional. But yeah, I mean, partnering with procurement people like ourselves, for example, you know, where we can help to get you started with that procurement plan, with that contracts register, identifying the procurements, having a plan ready, will just offer that reassurance that someone is on top of it. And that can also include access to things like best practice templates and, you know, general procurement advice and guidance, which is what we love to do, Victoria.
Yeah, and that leads us quite nicely, Nathan, onto staying ahead with the latest procurement reform. Then you can sign up for our procurement reform training, which has been delivered online on the 31st of January 2025. Between 9:30 and 12:30.
I can't wait to hear what I've got to say.
Our training will provide you with the knowledge and practical tools to understand these changes, improve your procurement strategies and ensure compliance with the national regulations. There is a slight cost for this, and it is only £60 per delegate, but you do get a procurement packed morning session with Nathan. We have.
Who could ask for more? I mean, that is the gift that keeps on giving. You could gift it for Christmas, just a thought to one of your colleagues, spend 3 hours with Nathan on procurement at the end of January. We'll gift wrap the invitation for you.
I bet everybody can't wait, Nathan.
Yeah.
So we have put the link to the booking form in the chat. We are having some technical issues with the form, but if you submit it, it does come through to us. You just don't get the confirmation. And if you haven't already signed up for our next webinar, there's now is the perfect time. And again, the link is in the chat. Our up and coming sessions are packed with valuable insights and practical tips from Nathan that will help you navigate the complexities of procurement with confidence.
Yeah, I'm not doing the next one. That one's with our energy expert, so I won't be on the one in January. So if you're really bereft at the thought of that, then do sign up to our training where you will see me on the 31st of January. Other than that, it'll be March. But that'll be a really good one because our energy expert really is. You think I'm a procurement nerd? He is an energy nerd. So if you need to know about how to have a strategy for sustainable energy management and where can we get the best deals for energy, get onto that one. That's a really good one. So and don't forget, folks, that the new Procurement Act will kick in. So far, we're still on course to kick in from the 24th of February 2025. So you probably won't see me until March, by which time we'll be in the new Act.
And a new outfit, clearly.
Yes, hopefully not this one.
Hopefully you'll have been allowed back from the North Pole.
Victoria, I've just been called away by Santa. He has a lot of presents to sort out. His budget this year, folks, talking about procurement planning, was £59.6 billion that we had to procure, and that's without inflation. He has to deliver to 310 million houses. That's 22 million kids per hour, over 200 million square miles. So that is quite a procurement feat. So if you just excuse me, I'll have to exit. I am being called away by Santa. So thank you very much, everyone.
Nathan.
May I wish you all a lovely Christmas and an even better New Year, time with family, friends and fun. Bless you all.
Thanks, Nathan. So hopefully today's webinar will have helped you align your procurement plans with the new regulatory requirements. It does sound like a lot of work, but it's all about making sure you're audit ready and transparent with your data. Make sure you involve your stakeholders and leverage the expertise of procurement experts like myself and Nathan. And remember to implement clear policies and use a centralised system to keep everything organised. And with these steps, you'll ensure your procurement process is smooth, compliant and ready for any audit that comes your way. And if you do need to procure an auditor, we also have that covered in our accountancy and financial services GPS solution. There is a feedback poll being put in the chat, I think, just for any feedback, or maybe we've already had feedback from a couple of people. Just thank you very much for that. And thank you very much. And I also do wish you all a happy Christmas and a New Year. And we will see you back in January.